Are we going to make it? Are we not going to make it? How does it look? Well, if I just plot the current curves don't look good. If we look at any of the groups working on global catastrophic risk assessment and existential risk assessment, the probabilities of really problematic stuff are way too high, way too near term. Now, that said, you asked this question about caterpillar into a butterfly. This is a really interesting question, because if I didn't know the caterpillar was going to go into a chrysalis and do the butterfly thing, and I was just watching the caterpillar grow, and I was forecasting a curve, I would assume that it just kept becoming a bigger and bigger caterpillar and eating more and more shit until it decimated all the plants and ate itself to extinction.
Yeah.
And so I can't keep plotting that curve, because it's not going to do that curve. It's going to do that curve till a certain point where it's actually eaten enough stuff, meaning the caterpillar is a net consumption machine, right? Like, it doesn't pollinate stuff. All it does is devastate everything around it, consuming, but it's getting the raw materials, the minerals, amino acids, to make a butterfly. So, but as this consumption machine, it is devastating the environment around it, but once it eats enough stuff that it has the fuel and resource necessary to make a butterfly, the imaginal cells, the first butterfly cells, start kicking on, triggers the movement into the chrysalis, at which point the caterpillar ends up dissolving, like all the organs dissolve, right? Dissolves all the way down to subcellular structures, and then gets to reform, right, at an amino acid, at a peptide level, reform to a butterfly that is not a retrofit of a caterpillar. It's a fundamentally different thing with a fundamentally different code, but you wouldn't have predicted that discrete phase shift by just continuing to forecast along the caterpillar curve, any more than you would if you just took the 40 weeks of in utero development and said, it looks bad, right? Like, if we didn't know birth was going to happen, it's getting really cramped around 42 weeks, around 44 weeks, it looks like it's just going to, like, get too big and die.
Right.
And the same can be said true for a little bird developing inside of an eggshell, right? Like, all the developmental phases are defined by net consumption and net growth in a finite, self-terminating way to get to the point that, of course, if it tried to continue, it would die. But it's to get to the point that it has the capacity to go through some discrete phase shift, the chrysalis, the birth out of the uterus and the cutting of the umbilical cord, the emergence out of the eggshell, and then on the other side of that discrete phase shift, there's a totally new curve. And so then the question is, could there be a discrete phase shift where all of what we've called humanity or civilization so far has been a developmental phase, where we were focused on, with capitalism, military, industrial complex, all the civilization structures, we were focused on gathering the parts necessary to build a truly global, sustainable, regenerative, anti-fragile, complex civilization. But now it's not going to be an extension of the current system. It is a dissolve and then restructure those technologies, those capacities, for a fundamentally new reason for being. And that is, I would say, the hope and the possibility is a world where win-lose game theory got us a lot of capacity to actually not just be a tribal people, but a global people. But now we actually have to transcend at the place where we've gotten so much power to win that power actually can't be used without destroying itself. We have to now transcend win-lose game theory.